friends, and welcome back to another video. My name is Julie if you're new here, and today I'm going to be talking about 5 books that have made me cry my eyes out. I cry easily, let's not pretend here. Sometimes I could cry at things as stupid as not having chocolate at home or not choosing the right movie on Netflix. But these books, they are different. They didn't just make me cry, they made me sob. It was ugly. The tears were streaming down my face. And because of the topic of today's video, I just wanted to say, I hope you're doing well. And if you don't, feel free to reach out to me. You can talk to me if you're not feeling good, and maybe, to be honest, if you're sad, it might not be a great idea to read these books, but you can still save them for future reference maybe. But sometimes you also just need a good cry. It can be really cathartic. And books can help with that because they can bring up all the emotions that might have been bottled up inside of you. And sometimes you just want to feel all sorts of emotions, not always the happy ones, but sometimes you're just in the mood to be sad. And that's what these books can help with. And the first of the 5 books that I'm going to recommend is My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. This book, I feel like, was just created to make you cry. It tells the story of 13-year-old Anna, and she was conceived as a bone marrow match for her sister Katie, who is battling leukemia. As Anna grows up, she becomes increasingly aware of her role in Katie's life as Kate's donor and kind of begins to question her parents' decisions and starts to think about what she actually wants. When Kate's health deteriorates and Anna is asked to donate her kidney to her, she decides to actually take legal action and get herself a lawyer to fight that and to represent her in court. And this novel basically follows the perspective of each family member through this. So it tells the story of Anna, Kate, her parents, and they also have a brother. And also the view of the lawyer is included in this. And it tells how each of them acts to the ethical, legal, and moral dilemmas surrounding Anna's right to her own body. Of course, the trial isn't easy for any of the parties involved, and there's a lot of tension between the family members, and there are also some secrets surfacing on the way. This novel is powerful and beautifully written, but it's also so sad. I mean, sick children is just always something that is very tragic, and especially in this situation you are facing this questions of what is right and what is wrong, and you don't really have the answer to them even after reading the book. And it kind of also makes you question, like, what kind of sacrifices would I do for the people that I love, and where are the limits in that? Which it's not a bad thing to have limits, it's just natural. And it also deals with the topic of how parents can choose for their children and at what age and what time in their life children get the right to choose on their own. And I think that's a very hard question to answer. So that's also why this book stayed with me for a really long time after I finished reading it. Same goes for the next book, which is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This book tells the story that is very important to me and very relevant to our society today, in my opinion, even though it's historical fiction, but there are kind of some parallels going on in our society right now, and that is pretty dangerous and something that more people should be aware of. It tells the story of Liesel, a girl in Nazi Germany whose life changes when she finds a book, which is why it's called The Book Thief, because she takes it and it isn't hers. And the book is told in the perspective of death, which I remember when I first read it, I thought it was such a genius choice. And the reason why this book is also so important to me is because it doesn't tell like one of those typical stories about Nazi Germany that focuses on the suffering and the oppression, which is obviously also very important, but this book kind of takes this as a given that we know about this already and we understand why it's bad. I hope everyone understands that. That is why the book focuses on the bystanders, the Nazis, and the ones that just went along with it, which was actually probably the majority of people, and that's the most dangerous thing, because not all people living in this country, which is now my country, were bad at the time, but they also didn't intervene. And that's the reason why it was possible. And there are so many lessons that we can learn from this, and also from this book, obviously. And I think it's such an important book because you can really feel and get a sense of the reasons that made it possible for someone so evil becoming so powerful. Because there's this promise of something better and a better world for you. Of course, I learned about all of this in school. Still, it can be very hard to grasp why there weren't more people standing up against it. And it's easy to say that you would do it, of course, but reading such an intense and emotional book makes you connect with the characters and makes you feel like you can understand kind of why it happened. Of course, never saying that it's right or you can justify it in any way, but you might understand why the people did what they did. And that was unfortunately nothing or not enough. And that it's not weapons that force them to do this or fear necessarily. It's not just that. It's also, as I've said, promise of a better life and a better future for yourself. I think you get the point of what I was trying to say. And I think you can also understand why I cried while I was reading this. It might also be even closer to me because I live in Germany than for some of you, but I still think it's very important that everyone reads this because it could happen to every single society, and we see similar tendencies in other countries, sadly. And I think education is the way to fight this. And that's also the reason why I think it's so important to read books like this, which make you emotional, which make you feel uncomfortable, because it kind of puts the finger in the wound. Very good book, so well written. I can only recommend it. It's great. Next up, we have one of my favorite romance series. It's Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And this book is very popular as well. I think all of the ones on this list are, but this one, if you look at the cover, kind of seems like a cute romance, and it really isn't. It's also more of a book that raises moral questions and really makes you reflect on society. The story follows Lou, a young woman who has recently lost her job, and this is the first time that I can confidently call a character quirky, because it really fits this time. In need of a job, she accepts the job as a care worker for Will Traynor, who is a wealthy and successful businessman who has become quadriplegic after a tragic accident that has happened to him. And initially these two have a very strained and awkward relationship, and let's be honest, he kind of treats her like shit. But over time they develop a connection and an understanding for each other, which nobody really has managed to do with him over the last few years after his accident. They really complement each other well, because Will kind of challenges Lou to come out of her comfort zone, to expand her horizon and pursue her dreams, which she didn't really dare to do before, while Lou brings back some joy and light into his life, which he doesn't really enjoy much otherwise. However, as the relationship deepens, Lou makes the discovery that Will has made the decision to end his life, and Lou is determined to now change that and give him a reason to live, basically, and tries everything possible, really. And this is so heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. I have cried like at multiple points in this book, obviously, especially at the end, because there's kind of this 1-year deadline that he has given his parents to change his mind, and so there's like a set date until when Lou has the time to kind of try to make him change his mind about this. I know some people don't like this book because they feel like it's saying that the life as a disabled person is not worth living, but I never interpreted it that way. I interpreted it totally different, because we get multiple perspectives from other people who have gone through the same thing as well, and they're leading a great life. So I don't really think the book tells you what's right or wrong. It's more about the question of autonomy than the question whether life is worth living. In my opinion, it's more like in which person's hand this decision lies. And we also don't get an answer for that. In my opinion, it's more that, at least not in a way that I understood the book. And of course, it can only tell one ending of the story. There can't be like multiple endings. It could have ended on a cliffhanger, but there are 2 more books in the series, so that wouldn't really make sense. But this book really made me think and reflect a lot about this. And to be honest, I still don't know the answer. But this book already kind of makes me feel like I'm going to cry just thinking about it, because for me it was probably the most emotional and the saddest one on the list, or at least the one where I connected the most with the characters. And as I've said, it has 2 more parts of the series, but you can definitely also read it as a standalone, because it doesn't end on a cliffhanger and it won't take away from the story, but the other 2 are very good, so I still recommend them. Next one is How to Save a Life by Eva Carter. Don't be fooled by the cover of this. This is also not a cute romance. It basically tells the story of triangle though, so there's Carrie, Tim and Joel. But the main part of the story really isn't a love triangle. The story begins at New Year's Eve. The 3 of them are attending a party. It's an outdoor party and they are celebrating, and I believe they are in their last year of school. And at this party, Joel has a heart attack and Carrie is the one to act quickly and does CPR, while Tim ends up being kind of frozen and doesn't really act until later on. And the story is about how this one event affects the life of each one of the characters, and let me tell you, it's mostly not in a good way. There are really a lot of times where you want to yell at the characters in this book. It's a deeply emotional read, and it deals with a lot of difficult topics like addiction and depression, which are also the points in the book that made me cry. Especially the part about wanting to help another person and not being able to do anything, that I sadly could relate to. The writing style though is very good, and the only critique that I would have of this book is that I have perceived this as marketed as a romance, which it just really isn't. It's more like literary fiction where a romance happens to take place, like in Normal People, for example. The story also has a strong medical focus, because 2 of the main characters want to work in the medical field, which is also why they know how to do CPR. And if you're into that, I would also recommend it. So yeah, it's a good book, but it's also very long and sometimes the characters can be infuriating. So yeah, but it's still a very interesting story to read. It's definitely different from most stories that I've read before. And I also cried while reading the author's note, because there's a personal connection to the story that made her write this book. And yeah, that really touched me. The last book that we have on this list is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This book, oh my god, Colleen Hoover is one of my favorite authors, and this book made me so emotional. I cried the whole way through. I'm not kidding, it was bad. It tells the story of Quinn and Graham, a young couple whose marriage is on the brink of collapse due to their struggles with infertility. And the novel alternates between like present day and the past where they first met each other, and it kind of tells how they first fell in love and then also their marriage right now. And in the past, Quinn and Graham's relationship was full of passion and promise, and as they struggled to conceive a child, their hopes and dreams slowly kind of give way to disappointment and despair, and they are really struggling to keep their relationship working, even though they are struggling with this really big thing in their life. And I think that is really relatable for a lot of people who are going through that, because I'm following a lot of couples on Instagram who have gone through that, and it can be so challenging. And I have the deepest respect for people who have gone through that or are going through that right now. And it's kind of like throughout the book, Quinn and Graham must confront their past and present struggles to finally heal and move forward with their life, which is hard because, of course, they are struggling a lot. And they have also got some secrets and they're hiding things from each other, which is never good. That happens. And now they have to handle that. And in this book, what really got me were the time jumps, because you get this very happy relationship and then you're jumping and it's just so sad and they are hurt and it's hurting you while you're reading it. The other reason why it got me so emotional is because this is probably one of my worst fears in life, that will happen to me. So yeah, some personal stuff like that can also affect how you perceive the book. Obviously, I honestly think this is probably one of Colleen Hoover's best books, even though it's not as hyped as some of the other ones. I think this is where she excels, making you connect with the character and really empathize with them, and then just emotionally destroying you. So these were the 5 books that made me cry my eyes out, and now you know a little bit more about the books and about me as well. Please let me know the last book you cried through in the comments down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!